This is America. Those were the cries heard from an immigration detention center in Texas. Kids of all ages are being separated from parents who were just trying to keep their babies safe. Instead, they are being mistreated and they spend countless nights alone on a cold, hard floor. This is the same America that deems itself a land of freedom and a country that holds equality at a high standard. America looks back at its history and thinks that it's just that. But history repeats itself relentlessly. Immigration detention centers are just one of plenty examples of racism in our world today. The treatment and conditions of these detention centers resonate that of a prison and are inhumane, as most of the people being held captive are innocent. Innocent fathers, innocent mothers, innocent children, all in search of the so-called American dream, the glorious melting pot land of equality and freedom. Instead, they were greeted by being ripped apart from their families and spending endless nights alone. Kaylin Ford tells the story of a 10-year-old little girl in an article she wrote for the New York Times. In this article, she sheds light on the conditions and treatment of the people in these centers and shows that racism still exists. The trauma that 10-year-old Dixie Anna and her family, along with thousands of other families, endured is an example of racism and ignorance in America. And until we realize this, it will never be the melting pot it claims to be. America's current immigration policies and discrimination against Hispanic people are just a form of scapegoating. Scapegoats have been used all throughout history as a strategy to alleviate public chaos by targeting a certain group of people. In the 1800s, Ireland was dealing with a famine, which pushed many Irish immigrants to come to the United States. Once they got here, they were discriminated against by Americans because they were Catholic and they were stereotyped as poor. Then, in 1882, America discriminated against Chinese immigrants who were seeking work. The Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 prohibited Chinese immigration because they were said to be the reason for the economic deficit in the West Coast. They were accused for stealing jobs from Americans since they were willing to work more for lower wages. Does this sound familiar? Later on, in 1942, America moved 110,000 people of Japanese descent from their homes to internment camps. Camps that held the same principles as the ones they were fighting at the time. Anyone even suspected of being Japanese was accused of being a spy in World War II, regardless of whether they were a citizen or not. Racial discrimination and stereotyping followed America into the 2000s. The 9/11 bombing not only shocked America, but incited hatred and stereotyping against Muslims. This event put targets on the backs of people from Middle Eastern descent as they are seen as a threat to national security. The war against terrorism became the war against racial diversity and acceptance. Racial discrimination and scapegoating continue as Trump is using anyone from Central America as a scapegoat for the increase in unemployment rates in America. Unfortunately, racism still exists in our world today. And the fight for racial equality continues as someone with such a high platform normalizes racism, hate, and scapegoating. The racism and the hate crimes that happen nowadays are the result of an even bigger issue. America's lack of interest regarding worldwide issues and ignorance toward anything non-American. In a video I watched on YouTube named A Gringa Growing Up in Mexico, a woman named Holly shares her experiences of growing up in Mexico as a white girl. From learning Spanish to going to school and struggling to fit in, her video goes into detail about school in Mexico and how it's super different from anything she's ever seen in the United States. She remembers taking trips to the United States and coming back to Mexico, and kids would be so interested. She recalls her friends asking her questions, and just so many questions like what America was like and what the people were like, and asking her to tutor them in English. Holly explains that the school she went to in Mexico required their students to learn English, learn American history, and know all the United States and capitals. In her eye-opening video, she asks the question, why isn't America as curious about other countries and cultures as other countries are about America? Holly discusses some powerful points in this video about how America is unaccepting and uninterested in anything non-American. And this is an issue that, again, many Americans are uninterested in or do not know about. As a girl from Guatemala that looks white, I can relate to Holly's issues of fitting in, and I strongly support her argument that America is ignorant of other countries and cultures. Because of my blonde hair and my green eyes and the color of my skin, I am often mistaken for white. However, I have never been in a conversation with someone where I told them that I was from Guatemala and they asked me how it was like there, what the people are like, or asked me to teach them Spanish. America as a whole is uninterested in learning about other countries and cultures, and the ignorance toward anything non-American is unbelievable for a country that claims to be a melting pot and accepting of everyone. America's ignorance is something that has not changed throughout the years, as shown with its recent immigration policies brought about by Trump. While immigration policies are put in place to ensure national security, detention centers are just another form of racism. The second-degree burns caused by battery acid on the face of Mahad Villalas because he looked Mexican are not keeping anyone safe. The death of Yasmin Juarez's 2-year-old little girl in a detention center because she was neglected by the very doctors who were supposed to be taking care of her isn't keeping anyone safe. The countless nights 10-year-old Dixiana and thousands of other kids spent alone on a cold, hard floor are not making America a safer place. Chanting, "Build a wall, make America great again," and truly wanting to rid the country of an entire race is absurd. Separating families and destroying lives is inhumane and not making this country any safer. We need to make learning a new language more than a required high school credit. We need to make diversity more than just the front page of every single college catalog. We need to start accepting others for who they are. Until America realizes that its ignorance and lack of interest is leading to racism and hate crimes, it will never be the melting pot it claims to be.